Welcome tonight. We're going to call this special meeting of the Waterford Association, Inc. to order at 7:05. The purpose of this meeting is for the Bylaws Committee to present some possible bylaws changes that they feel and the board feels could be important prior to membership opening. So the format for tonight is I'm going to introduce myself. The committee will speak. Attorney Catherine Marion, who's been helping out in this process, will speak, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers. And the way to do that will be to type in the comments box, which should show up on the bottom of your screen. And if you put your comments in there, we'll try to organize them and call on everyone. We just ask that we try to limit this discussion tonight to the scope of the presentations, and then the Bylaws Committee might also talk a little bit more about how they plan to expand the conversation after tonight. So without further ado, my name is Charlie Benzik. I'm the president of the Waterford Association of Pleasure Beach this year. I'm very excited. It's my 38th season. Every summer of my life I've spent at Pleasure Beach. And if you are friends with me, the little store, the raft, Fireman's Fair need no further explanation. It's been a really important part of my life. Professionally, I work for myself. I run a very small company. I serve on, several philanthropic and professional boards and associations. And I'm really honored for this opportunity. I'm looking forward to the experience and getting to know everyone better and really working to make the beach better. So without further ado, again, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah King and Susan Benzik, the co-chair persons of the Bylaws Committee, and then they will turn it over to Attorney Marion. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie, and the board for calling this special meeting on behalf of the Bylaws Committee. And hello, everybody out there. The Bylaws Committee this year is being co-chaired, obviously, by myself and a new volunteer, Sarah King. She is new to the committee, but not new to the beach or the Pleasure Beach community. Also, Kathy Robbins and Pat King have returned as members of the committee, adding valuable input. 2020 was an extraordinary year, and our lives were affected in many ways by the pandemic, but the Waterford Association was affected too. Houses sold quickly and more families wanted to join our beach. We reached our maximum capacity of 200 early in the season last year. And now we have a wait list of at least 14. This is the new reality of Pleasure Beach. And now we have to face the challenges that an expanded membership brings and make changes to meet the new needs. So this is why you're hearing from the Bylaws Committee in the middle of the winter. To start with, there are changes to the language in Article 2 membership that need your urgent attention. The 3 deletions of antiquated language and 1 adjustment to the payment dates that the committee is recommending will go a long way to eliminating confusion and potentially very problematic issues with membership. Plus, if approved, these changes will bring more fairness to the membership application and renewal process, as well as the whole community. Accordingly, if you agree, these amendments can be voted on and put into effect before the 2021 membership season begins. Sarah and I will read each of the 4 items from Article 2 membership to identify the current language and the proposed changes. Then Attorney Catherine Marion from Waller, Smith and Palmer is present to follow up and explain the legal ramifications of the language in these bylaws.
Thank you, Susan. It is a pleasure to be serving with you as co-chair. And hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I agree that the 4 items we are presenting tonight should be discussed now with attention to our full membership and wait list. The 4 items are highlighted in yellow on the attachment that Jen Godin and Charlie sent in the January 31st, 2021 email announcing this special meeting to the membership. So we encourage you to look at this file during the meeting. If you don't have it, though, we will be reading each item to you and then making our suggestions about them.
So the first item is from Article 2, Section 1, and it reads, all members of the association in good standing as of August 17th, 1974, living in other areas of the town of Waterford, not included in the Pleasure Beach section as defined above, shall be exempt from the residential requirements set forth above, and shall remain members as long as membership dues are paid in accordance with Section 5. We suggest deleting this item because it is no longer applicable. It does not affect any of our current members because this language is no longer relevant.
The second item is from Article 2, Section 1, which reads, any person who has been an assessed member for at least 10 years, but is now ineligible to be a member by virtue of their current residence, may renew his or her assessed membership annually if recommended by 2 current assessed members. We suggest deleting this item because the Waterford Association Incorporated has reached its 200 household maximum capacity. As currently written, this item allows people who move out of the Waterford Association boundaries to remain as members. It no longer seems appropriate to allow this option to people who are no longer a part of the Pleasure Beach community, especially as we consider those households on the wait list.
The isn't really what we're talking about tonight, but it does say associate members pay only dues and have the right to vote, but may not use the beach unless they are also members of an assessed household. The total number of assessed households shall be limited to 200 with a grandfather clause that states people who now reside within the original boundaries will be allowed to join regardless of the total number. We suggest deleting the words that follow the number 200, including the grandfather clause and the reference to original boundaries. After researching what these original boundaries were, it was found in the 1949 bylaws that these original boundaries refer to the entire town of Waterford. We believe it is in the best interest of our membership to eliminate confusion about our boundaries by deleting the current wording. At this point, I'm going to ask Catherine Marion to comment further on this particular wording.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me. The first provision on the 1974 provision that is no longer applicable to anyone, that no one would be able to take advantage of that. That's one of those, in the life cycle of an association, things that you need to clean up when you can. Bylaws are complicated enough as they are. If you've got a provision in there that is now meaningless, the next time you do an amendment, take it out. On the original boundaries provision. So what this, from a corporate governance perspective, what this provision does is give membership rights to anyone in the town of Waterford, regardless of the 200 member limit that you members have set for yourselves. So it really takes away a significant right of you members, owners of WAI too. Is that what you call
WAI.
it? So as Susan mentioned, you've seen the increased demand. I will say that I have seen it in every membership association, certainly every beach club that we work with in Southern Connecticut it is experiencing this big demand, and it really calls in a lot of places for some changes and thinking about members exercising their rights to set membership appropriately and in the best interest of the whole organization. So by leaving this provision in place, you members give up the right to control the maximum number of members you'll have. You've seen the increased demand, and if everyone in Waterford is allowed to join, you could have 20 new members next year or 200 new members next year. And this bylaw will allow everyone in Waterford to join, anyone and everyone in Waterford to join. It certainly is within the best interest of your membership and and the association to, and you've decided that 200 is the appropriate number. So it seems in the best interests of everyone, including all the members, to not allow others to take the rights to another 200, 300, however many Waterford residents would want to join. You in effect remove the cap that you yourselves have put on membership by leaving this provision in. On the 10-year rule gives 10-year members the right to take their WAI membership out of town with them. It doesn't force an increase in the total number of members, but it could involuntarily decrease the percentage of members who actually live locally. Right now, I think it's just a few members who have moved out of town and maybe haven't gone far, but by leaving this provision in place, again, you members give up the right to decide how many more of your 200 members can be from out of town or will be from out of town. And by removing it, it puts you, the members, in control. Both of these provisions puts you in control of your 200 member cap and the geographic boundaries that you've set for yourselves, and puts you in control even with respect to new people who would meet this 10-year rule and then could move anywhere. They might just move to the other side of Waterford or New London, but they might move to Oregon, and there's one of your 200 memberships that has fled. So in reviewing this and this proposal, it certainly seems to me to be researched, thought out, thorough, reasonable. It is not a proposal that targets any individuals. And when I spoke with the committee about the alternatives, it became clear that there aren't any. There are other ways you can address the increases in membership, things you can do with your waiting list, but those don't address this provision that blows through your 200 member limit without any ability on the part of you folks to control that, and limits to some degree you being able to keep your membership local. So that is sort of I'll turn it back over to Susan.
Actually, I will continue on with our fourth item. Thank you, Attorney Marion, for that. And our final item to discuss tonight is also from Article 2, Section 5, which reads, dues for membership shall become due and payable on or before July 1st. If not paid before August 1st, the member failing to pay shall become delinquent. If dues are not paid before September 1st, the membership shall cease. We are proposing new dates to revise section 5 so that it will read, dues for membership shall become due and payable on or before May 1st. If not paid before June 1st, the members failing to pay shall become delinquent. If dues are not paid before July 1st, the membership shall cease. The proposed change of dates to move earlier by 2 months for each step is motivated by consideration for prospective members on the wait list. Current members should pay membership dues in a timely manner or be considered delinquent or ceased by July 1st. Prospective members on the wait list should not be forced to wait until September 1st for their new membership to be activated.
These are the 4 items which we are focusing on at this special meeting. I would now like to open the discussion further to Attorney Marion, who will further explain why it is important that the Waterford Association, why it should eliminate language that is inaccurate and unclear, as well as a few more broader areas.
Thank you, Susan and Sarah. So each of the provisions under discussion tonight was adopted by the WAI members pursuant to the bylaws in place at that time. And since the incorporation, there has been a provision about how our bylaws amended. The members adopt that provision, and it is the rule that is followed for your operations. So every one of these provisions that was adopted, most likely the same provision allows for the termination or removal of any of those provisions. The bylaws in effect today authorize and set out Article 12 that a 2/3 vote of the members is required for any bylaw amendment. Some organizations put higher unanimity for some decisions, lower for some decisions, but again, that bylaw also is in the control of you members. And in which the bylaws are changed. The bylaws could include, for example, a provision that stated that a certain bylaw will never be changed or required unanimous approval. And the members have chosen not to date, included a provision, so every bylaw amendment needs to be passed by 2/3 of you. So said another way, that there is no bylaw that can bind you members longer than 2/3 of you choose to be bound by that bylaw. There is no right granted in these bylaws that's permanent unless the bylaws specifically state that it is. So in that way, no members don't really have a right, other than general fairness and not being discriminated against, a right to rely on bylaws not changing, to rely on that provisions of the bylaws will remain as they are, because you yourselves have established a system where 2/3 of you can vote to change any of them. And that's what governs you. So most membership organizations like WAI require periodic amendments, as you know, to remove things like that 1974 provision. And you know, you're a living, breathing organization with changing demographics, and there have been a lot of pressure on membership. And So the decisions have to be made reasonably and in the best interest of the members as a whole and WAI as a whole. And these two, to me, are not arbitrary. You members can choose to live with the risks that are in these, that you don't have the control of membership that you will have if these two provisions are removed. And just have heard that there are discussions planning for next year's amendments. And one of them, I think, is another membership discussion that may be, in your next look. And I will note that on transfer of membership. So maybe that would be your last membership discussion. And I will just note for that discussion that under Connecticut statute specifically, the rights to transfer membership have to be stated in your certificate of incorporation or bylaws. And if the right to transfer membership is not set out in the certificate of incorporation or bylaws, membership terminates upon the death of the member. So there are a couple exceptions to that statute and that general rule are if somebody has deeded rights. I don't see that in the land records at just looking at the index, but there are a couple ways that membership rights do transfer, and it would be a contract, some sort of an agreement outside of the bylaws. Very often those things happen at the inception of an organization. And the same with, there could be deeded rights in somebody's property deed that they and their successor owners of their property would be able to have WAI membership. And no bylaw amendment could change that those are property interests. And on a somewhat related topic, the idea of rights outside of the bylaws. I know that maybe 2 years ago, Susan, there were some renters who were grandfathered in. And so that is kind of an example of another agreement outside of the bylaws. So those people who were grandfathered in, no bylaw provision could remove that agreement that was outside of the bylaws. But those really are the only membership rights that could exist other than in the bylaws. So, and on a more global level, as you undertake your next steps, I and other corporate governance attorneys are retained to advise associations such as yours on the law that must be complied with and good corporate governance. Not to tell you how to run your association, other than it must be lawful. So WAI is a Connecticut non-stock corporation. Non-stock mostly means nonprofit, organized under the Non-Stock Corporation Act and subject to it. And WAI has been granted tax exempt status by the Internal Revenue Service. Many of you have heard the term 501c3 referring to charities. That references to the section of the Internal Revenue Code that exempts most of the major charities that you think of from paying most tax. WAI's tax exempt status is not under 501c3, it's under 501c7 and of the Internal Revenue Code, and organizations under 501c7 are referred to by the IRS and the tax courts as social clubs. So in that way, your organization is very similar to our clients who are fish and game clubs, and not very similar to property associations that might look more like you from the outside, but really are not about membership. So it's a special kind of tax exempt status that 501c7s have. It's not exactly like charities like United Way or, the Waterford Land Trust, because those are organized for the benefit of the general public, and 501c7s are organized for the benefit of you members. To maintain this tax exempt status, there are many, many, many IRS rules that must be complied with. And to the IRS, not exclusively, but to a large degree, that is about the purpose of WAI, which is set out in the preamble to your bylaws. What is your tax exempt charitable mission? And that's a lot of what the IRS is concerned about: your use of funds, revenues. So, for example, you can't start charging non-members for use of the beach and generate a lot of revenue that way, or set up a hot dog stand and open it to the public. Those things are outside of your mission and purpose, which is the recreation of you people and the enjoyment and taking care of your property. So in Connecticut, to maintain good standing and be authorized to do business here in Connecticut, WAI has to comply with the Non-Stock Corporation Act I mentioned earlier. So WAI has to follow both state and IRS rules. So I'll keep it as brief as I can. Try to keep you folks awake. What are those rules, and what does WAI need to consider in your upcoming bylaw processes to be in compliance with these sets of rules? So as I've advised the bylaw committee, and we've talked to some degree, there's some kind of WAI basic structural processes that need to be addressed so that WAI is functioning properly, delegating authority effectively, and understanding who is being delegated authority and where it's coming from. So in all corporations, the owners, whether it's you members or stockholders in a for-profit corporation, the owners hold all the power and the authority until they delegate it. And in both instances, they delegate it to boards of directors, and that's intentional. A board is a group that has to meet and has to discuss and has to try and form consensus. And everyone thinks that's the best way to manage that. Stockholders and members think that I want a board. I want a board to oversee and have to think and meet and discuss and consider other perspectives. So the corporate structure that everyone uses, with very few exceptions, has you members electing a board of directors who then have all the authority that you delegated to them to oversee your association, and they in turn delegate it to either committees or officers, specific delegations that they oversee. And all of those people have fiduciary duties to act in the best interests of the association. And so then the officers and to some degree the committees handle the day-to-day running of the organization. The Internal Revenue Code, Connecticut statutes, and case law provide for and assume that elections and delegations of power and authority will happen in that way. So while there's some flexibility, particularly in the Non-Stock Corporations Act for some variations, the basic structure is necessary, or delegations of authority really are not happening as they need to from you members down. One of the variations that many social clubs have is a requirement that all officers be on the board, and that is fine. It doesn't necessarily alter delegation to the board and then the officers, which really is critical. So here at WAI, members only elect officers who become board members as a result of their officer election. So the way that the statutes are set up, there's a Connecticut statute saying the members will elect a board of directors. And that isn't really happening here. So it really is a structural change that needs to be considered to align the delegations of authority with the statutes, with the case law that comes from it, with the expectations of the Internal Revenue Service and the Secretary of State and the courts that would have to weigh in on any lawsuits that came. That's a lot to absorb. And for today, I'm happy to answer questions. And I think that it's important for you members to have control of your membership numbers, and where your members live. And if you leave these two bylaws in here, the 10-year and the original boundaries language, you give up a lot of your power and control to deal with membership as you think appropriate in this time that really is filled with a lot of pressure to admit more members.
Thank you, Catherine. That was very informative. And yes, like I said earlier, we're going to try to limit the scope of the discussion now to those 4 things that are on the table. This is recorded and will be posted. So all that information that Catherine just gave us is very important to the ongoing bylaws discussion, but doesn't necessarily affect what we're talking about tonight. But everyone's going to want to, rewatch that if you have any questions, and we'll disseminate the information as well. I have a bit of a question 0. Annie Gorley posted a question about another edit in the memo that went out that wasn't addressed in tonight's talking points, about the strike through language of either resident of in the intro to article or section 2. Sarah and Susan, would you like to address that?
Sure, but I'll probably ask for Catherine's opinions. We actually discussed that, and the conclusion was that until we have defined what an associate member is going to be and what we as members want our associate member to be, we needed to put off striking that language and making changes to section 1. So it was a little premature to strike it. We need to discuss more associate members when we have more informational sessions, and then we will fix that first section to be consistent with everything else. Oh, and Catherine, do you want to say anything?
But first, I just want to jump in because I saw a comment from a participant that it's not stricken through on the website. So that's part of the correction that we're trying to make right now, is it was not intended to be included in the file that was sent out to everyone. So that's not an accurate representation of the way the bylaws are written right now.
Great. Okay. A couple people posted some questions on the first item, and a couple people posted questions on the second item. If anyone would like to speak, please, note it in the comments. I'm just going to read the questions, but if anyone wants to say their piece, they're more than welcome to chime in. I just can't really tell who wants to talk and who just wants their question answered. Carol asked about if the first one would affect the total number of members in terms of the 200 members we have right now. And that was one question. I
Who you-
believe in your presentation, you said it doesn't apply to any current members, but please confirm that.
So this, we're talking about the 10-year?
The first, no, this, I
The
believe.
1970
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
and
74.
so, it is my understanding from the bylaw committee that there is no one who was in good standing on August 17th, 1974, who was living in another part of Waterford. Is that right, Susan?
Yes.
And
Yes.
therefore, and so no new people are going to join that group because, you know, it's set on an act that had to happen in 1974, a standing that had to be, and therefore there is no one to whom this applies any longer.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, so that is an example of just language that's a relic from a previous version that no longer really serves a purpose. No one would be affected by it. There were a lot more questions on number 2. The first one was, you know, how many people right now are eligible for the 10-year rule if they moved out of the neighborhood? And the number in the chat is 71%. Is that correct? As far as the committee, or Catherine, as far as you know?
That's that percentage was provided by our treasurer,
Okay, great.
and it's over 70% currently who have been here over 10 years.
And live outside.
No, live
No.
inside.
Live inside.
That's to carry your membership away with you if you move outside the boundaries.
So what
Yeah.
is it? Most of you,
That was my question. I'm
Mhm.
sorry. I didn't know I was unmuted, but since I am, so are there people that currently are part of that 10-year thing who live outside already of the boundaries that are active? Or, you know, that are considered members, or how many are outside of the boundaries now?
I think it's been applied maybe 2 or at the most 3 times in the last 10 or 15 years. And one of the people who was outside the boundaries, she moved to Millstone, and she was grandfathered in those resolutions that we passed 2 years ago. So the only people we know who used it have been grandfathered in. But the potential for many people to use it,
I'd like to make a point.
70% is there, and we have to, I think, protect ourselves against people using that. And it's only fair for the people on the wait list also.
That resolution was only related to voting, not to membership.
I don't know.
The second one, the one that you read.
No, it doesn't say anything about voting.
No, I don't
It
think
does-
it
it
says
doesn't-
anything about voting.
No, I
So the people that were grandfathered in to be able to vote. What didn't relate to their membership status.
Oh, you're talking about the resolutions.
This is the 10-year.
You mentioned in 2019, the resolutions to grandfather in, those were related to voting, not to membership. So we didn't grandfather in their memberships, we just grandfathered in their ability to vote.
Annie, that's not true, because I'm looking at the resolution now. The
Okay.
first resolution is Joanne Boisvert, Carolyn Batista, and Mrs. Pica. The membership, it was guaranteed their membership.
Okay, so not everybody on that resolution was guaranteed a membership, though.
Well, I'm just saying that's just to correct that. So I mean, I can go through the rest of
But
it.
there were other people listed on there, right, who only had their voting rights protected.
that's a different paragraph, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a different item.
So there are still members in jeopardy of losing membership.
I don't think so.
Talking
No.
about the second highlighted paragraph from section 1.
Okay. Okay, so not related to the
Yeah,
two-
there are only 4 items that we're discussing tonight. And
Okay,
there's
thank you for
4
clarifying.
items that have to do with Article 2.
Great, thank you, David. Is there somewhere we can find those resolutions? Is that posted anywhere?
I will make sure they're posted. I'll work with the bylaws committee.
Charlie, they're an exhibit to the existing bylaws that are already posted to the website.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Okay. Catherine, I guess to expand on that, in your opinion, without the strike through language of or residents of, are there any implications to anyone's membership status by the changes that we are discussing tonight?
My information is based on what, I don't have membership information or those are the questions I asked. And I've asked all along, if anyone is going to, any current member is going to lose membership as a result, as was the case in 2019, consider grandfathering them in. It's my understanding now that you don't think that there is anyone who right now falls under the 10-year rule who has not been grandfathered. But that could change in a moment. The next time somebody moves, then you have another person until this gets changed. So, but the grandfathering can happen anytime that it is deemed appropriate, so as not to take away somebody's membership.
All right. There was another comment, more of a point of interest. Someone in the chat stated that they joined the beach over 10 years ago with a certain set of expectations in place. Do you want to respond to that, Catherine? I believe you covered it in your presentation.
Right. That members, the only expectations that you can have of each other are that you will follow the bylaws and do so fairly and reasonably. And following the bylaws may include amending any of these provisions that can be amended. And it is very much within the members' authority and purview, and you could argue responsibility to take measures to put yourselves more in control of your membership. And removing these 2 provisions would do that. And again, it's unfortunate if people had relied on the bylaws not changing, but I don't think that unless the next bylaw amendment is going to be, here are the bylaws we're never going to change, which is absolutely within your purview also. But until then people should not have relied on bylaws not changing when it's very clear from your bylaws how you people are, how you change your own rules, your own bylaws.
Okay, great. So to summarize, it wouldn't affect anyone who's already taken advantage of this. It seems like they've been grandfathered in, and it wouldn't preclude us from making similar grandfather changes in the future to allow for whatever we choose. It really, you're saying, gives us more control over that 200 rather than how it's currently written.
Right. The 10-year, removing the 10-year provision gives you members more control about who are those 200 members? Where do they live? Do some of them live far away because we allowed that right to stay in there, that you could take your membership and leave town with it? Or, and that's a fine decision to make, but it doesn't put you in control. It puts 10-year members in much more control individually and not as a membership.
Okay. Maybe this is for the committee, or it might be outside, but it was a comment, so I'll read it so everyone sees it. And basically it says that we should be protecting our existing 200 members and not worrying about a wait list. If I sell my house or move out of the area, a potential buyer is then put on the waiting list. We should help our existing members by allowing the purchasers of their property a 30-day window to pay the assessment and replace the existing member in the 200. If they don't exercise it, then the membership would open up. As a committee, is that something that you want to respond to tonight? I'm sure that you've thought about some of the implications around this rule. Or do you want to address that in a future informational session?
Well, I think we can definitely visit it in a future informational session, but I, again, would just like to thank Catherine for her comment that we should be aiming to give our membership more control, but we need to decide what that control includes. And therefore, I just heard her say, if the tenure rule stays in, then more control is given to people who have tenure minimum membership and choose to move out. And then it weakens our organization as a whole. So I think we have to be careful about this kind of ideal statement of concentrating on our current membership, because if our current membership aims to have self-serving goals, then it may not be best for the group, the community, as opposed to individuals who may want to leave with expectations of returning. So that's just my very quick response based on what I heard Catherine say, but maybe Susan would like to add to that.
Maybe Catherine.
You membership will need to make that decision. And if you decide that you do want current members to be able to transfer their membership to the person who buys their house, you need to amend the charter or bylaws to affirmatively provide that. Otherwise, the law states that there's a statute specifically saying if the transfer of membership is not in your COI or bylaws, membership terminates upon the death of the member. So an affirmative bylaw would have to be added to give members the right to transfer, as that comment suggested, from somebody buying their home.
And I just wanted to add that we purposely didn't include the topic of transfer of membership because we feel people might have a lot of strong feelings about that, and it requires more discussion and debating maybe than this meeting has the time for, but also it's not a proposed amendment right now because we need as a group to discuss it and get input from different people and, reach a decision.
Attorney Marion, this is David. I have a question to ask you. So 71% of our members qualify to take qualify for the 10-year rule, that in the event that they had to move out of the area, they could still become members. I mean, the way I look at that is people sometimes always come back to the community. So, I mean, if there's a situation where somebody has to move out to take care of a sick relative, they sell their house, they're out, and yet they want to come back to Waterford or come back to a neighboring community in a couple years, then they're not going to be able to be a member of the community that they potentially had been members for 50 years.
Right.
So that's,
Yeah.
I mean, that's, I think, when you put it in perspective of, people sometimes leave an area, but they, some people do come back.
So, one of the things that's difficult in bylaws, you can't just, give one person an exception in bylaws. So a situation like that, if this is removed, right, that person would not, would have to go back on the waiting list. But if this provision is not moved, then people like that would absolutely be able to keep their membership, but people who have no plans to come back, and maybe come once a year or not very much, could also keep their membership. So it really is one of those, the greater good decisions that you members have to make, which is why you're all asked to vote on it.
And I think you also had mentioned that, that people could be grandfathered, but there's no guarantee that there would be a grandfather, because that has to be put up for all the members to vote on.
Right, and what you're actually, I don't know if what you're talking about is grandfathering. You're talking about if somebody, well, maybe you are, somebody who plans to come back at some point. Yes, absolutely. Grandfathering is not something anyone has a right to either.
Great.
And that done on an individual basis is very dangerous. And as far as fairness goes, I mean, that doesn't seem like a good idea. I mean, if the whole membership is voting on grandfathering someone, say 2 people in 1 year, one says, okay, you can be grandfathered, you live 10 miles away. The other is 100 miles away, you can't be grandfathered. Well, maybe there's some rule you could come in with there. But if both people are 1 mile or 10 miles away and you accept one and not the other, now you've got another problem. And in terms of fairness, I mean, that's, I'm assuming, attorney, that that's the case.
Rules and grandfathering all have to be applied fairly. And if you have 2 people in very similar circumstances, somebody would have to make a clear distinction as to why one was going to be grandfathered and not the other. This is sort of a separate discussion, though, than, well, it's related, but as somebody who may be hurt eventually in this, and that has to be weighed against the potential impact on your membership of not having control over whether people who leave the area can keep their membership. And it's just a decision.
Great. We are running up against 8 o'clock. I can keep this open a couple minutes longer, but I'm going to mute everyone and try something. I think that there have been some really good points raised, especially about this 200 member cap and the implications of, I versus us and how you view it through what lens. I think that those are going to be really good discussions in the info sessions. I also have transfer of membership and the 200 person cap as talking points for a future informational session as well. Let's see, payment due dates. Okay, what I'm going to try is, I just did a poll. I just listed the 4 things. It's not official. I just want to see if it works. So I think everyone on their screen right now should see the poll pop up. If you want to take a second and fill it out, it might give us a good sense about where the 30 people in the meeting stand as far as the different provisions that are provided.
I can't seem to get to the 4th one. Is anybody else having that issue?
Scroll.
Okay, I've got it. I've got it. I've got it. I've got it.
We're all learning. All right, well, almost 20 people responded. There's 29 of us here. I'll wait another 15 or 20 seconds. And then we do have some other questions in the chat that we can address quickly. And then we're going to want to call it for time. We didn't get started until 7:05, so I think 8:05 is a reasonable time. There's one more suggestion of new language about notification of dues being paid. I think we can add that to the talking points for the informational session. And there is a comment about an inconsistency that the committee may choose to address. But, so the results of the poll, I don't know if everyone can see them, but 100% of the people who are here tonight thought that removing the archaic language of number 1 is a good idea. So that's a good sign that we can all agree on something. Number 2, it was, I would say, split, 70-30. People aren't willing to all say yes right now. Some people probably have strong no's. That's going to be a good discussion. Are you in favor of removing the original boundaries language? 25 yeses to 3 no's. And then are you in favor of changing the dates of the assessment? 96% yes. So in general, good job, committee. I think that's a good vote of confidence. The last question that was raised, and let me know if you want to address it tonight or in the future, is the inconsistency that's created between changing the dates in one section and having them referenced in another.
I think that that's a good point, and we should look into that, because perhaps we can do that in the process of these informational sessions and have that be a good result. If it doesn't make sense if we're creating another inconsistency and we can avoid it. So let us take a look at that and thank the person for proposing it.
Great. Okay. Well, are there any other questions? Does anyone have any other comments on these 4 proposed changes tonight?
I had a question for Catherine. Can I ask?
Is it within the scope?
It is. It actually was a question about the original boundaries.
Great.
So, Catherine, on the original boundaries, I don't know if you can hear me, if you're still here. Is she here?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, okay.
I had to unmute myself again.
Okay, sorry. On the original boundaries, I guess I was confused on this issue, because I realized there was some talk or that the original boundaries were all of Waterford. On the other hand, when you look at the original deed, it also talks in 1946, I believe, that we also talked about what our boundaries were, which were still Lanphier Road. We talked about what our boundaries were way back in 1946. So that was inconsistent with all of our boundaries being the whole of Waterford. So I'm confused on that. It seems to me that the intent was always that our boundaries would be the smaller area.
So the bylaw committee worked through the prior versions of the bylaws. So 2 thoughts. I think that if this provision remains in, we need to get a whole understanding that whether it does apply to the entire town of Waterford or some smaller part, the bylaw committee thinks that it appears to be the whole town. If it is being removed because the members don't want to have more than 200 members, and leaving this in regardless of where the boundaries are will take away your ability to limit it to 200. So if it's going to be removed, you don't need the research on where the original boundaries actually were. If you're going to leave it in, then there needs to be a common understanding of what that term means.
And I have a comment. What deed are you referring to, Gail?
I believe that there was a deed found in not a deed, but what am I referring to? I'm just brain dead by this time of night. I believe that there was something was found that in 1946, our boundaries were actually stated to be the Lanphier Road, all of the boundaries actually smaller than what we have now.
Well, I haven't seen anything to that effect, or I would love to if you can find it. We do have the 1949 bylaws, and it says that anybody within the town of Waterford is eligible to be a member. And it continued until 1974, until it was amended then. And that's the article that we've agreed to get rid of. And it came into being as they brought in the boundaries, and they didn't want to exclude members who were members. So, but I believe, you know, the area, the time period from 1946 to 1949, it's a gray area, and nobody's been able to provide anything factual or like as proof what was going on. So I'd love to see it or investigate it with you.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for participating. We're going to close it off now. This has been recorded. It will be posted. And I think it was really a positive first experience with this technology. The questions have all been saved. You may have noticed in the transcript. So none of the information of this meeting will be lost. And the questions that weren't addressed will certainly, I think, be addressed in coming weeks or in the informational session. The informational session will also be held via Zoom on February 28th at 7 p.m. The same link. So if you use Notepad on your computer, you can copy this link in there, and you can always use it to get to our Zoom room, or emails will also be sent out reminding people. So that's an option. Sarah and Susan, do you want to make any closing comments, or Catherine, would you like to make any closing comments?
We just want to thank everyone for their participation and their attendance tonight. This is just an excellent demonstration of your desire to be a part of this community. And we just wanted to reiterate that our goal in this meeting is to encourage that participation, give you an opportunity to have a voice so that we're all working together.
Yes, I agree. And thank you, Catherine, for your time this evening.
You all for
You
having me.
educated us all on some of the finer points of our bylaws.
I am always available.
Thank you.
You all.
Thank
Have a
you,
good night.
everyone. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.